The Industrial Revolution began in around 1760, and since then, numerous cutting-edge technological and agricultural advancements have been made. This machinery has caused humans to increase their CO2 emissions into our planet's atmosphere. However, the atmosphere isn't the only great natural source that is affected by the increasing levels of CO2 we emit each and every day. Another issue began to arise when the ocean started to gradually absorb a great portion of the CO2 emissions that wasn't making its way into the planet's atmosphere. This absorption process is called ocean acidification. The world's oceans absorb just over a quarter of the CO2 emissions, which is approximately 22 trillion tons daily. This absorption has major effects on the planet's water. Ocean acidification is when excess CO2 is absorbed from the atmosphere into the oceans and combines with H2O. The chemical equation is as follows. CO2 gas plus H2O liquid yields H2CO3, an aqueous solution. The result of this reaction is carbonic acid. It is helpful to think of an ocean acidification reaction to that of adding an Alka-Seltzer tablet to a cup of water. It will fizz for a few seconds and ultimately will change the chemical makeup of the water. The pH scale measures how acidic or basic a substance is. It ranges from 0 to 14, 0 being an acidic substance, while 14 is a basic or alkaline substance. If a substance falls in the middle around 7, it's neutral. In general, tap water has a pH level about 8, which is fairly basic. The Alka-Seltzer tablet decreases the tap water pH level to about 6.5, which is still fairly neutral, but more acidic. This is the exact process of ocean acidification. The Alka-Seltzer is a carbonate, so it acts as the CO2, and the water in the cup is an ocean, now filled with carbonate ions. The consumption of these carbonate ions is what makes the ocean more acidic, which ultimately prevents calcification, the creation of calcium salts. Excess carbonation of the water has many harmful effects on the aquaculture, such as lessening the minerals that marine life need to survive. This issue mostly affects animals such as oysters, mussels, urchins, starfish, and zooplankton, all of which are imperative to the aquatic systems. Ocean acidification poses multiple threats when the water is overcarbonated, and a crucial example of this is coral bleaching.
Coral bleaching is another environmental issue that is caused by ocean acidification, but it occurs through a different process. Coral bleaching occurs when polyps holding algae get stressed due to changes in the climate such as light, nutrients, or temperature. Polyps are individual coral that connect themselves to form the larger coral structures that we see. Polyps hold a large amount of algae within. The algae provide the polyps with food through photosynthesis, and the polyp provides a home for the algae. Factors like global warming, pollution, and acidity in the water can stress the polyps, causing them to expel their algae that they house. The polyps become weaker and get a white shell. That's why it's called bleaching. The expulsion of the algae doesn't kill the polyps immediately, but it does put the polyp in a stressed and weakened state. The image below shows 2 coral reefs. The image to the left shows a healthy coral reef, whereas the image on the right shows a reef that has suffered severe bleaching. This bleaching or loss of algae is a major problem because it significantly diminishes the number of resources the aquatic life can inhabit and consume.
While many everyday people don't always have the time or access to reach higher government about environmental issues, we can make a difference in other simpler ways. The easiest way to help reduce our carbon footprint is to be more conscious. Humans contribute to ocean acidification more than any other species. In our day-to-day lives, we use things that aren't always the most eco-friendly, such as plastic water bottles we toss out, wasting paper, and many environmentally unconscious things that we don't necessarily realize are harmful. But many of the things we pour down the sink or plastic we toss away ends up in our rivers and lakes, and eventually they reach our oceans. If we were all to cut down on the products that weren't eco-friendly, we would be able to decrease our carbon dioxide emissions. Another way we could help solve coral bleachings is if humans restore the dead coral by re-entering zooxanthellae into the coral's tissues to bring the coral back to life. Conserving water is another beneficial thing humans can do because it helps reduce the runoffs and wastewater that reaches oceans. When some fertilizers are used in gardens and farms, chemicals like phosphates and nitrates eventually reach our oceans. When phosphates reach the ocean, it speeds up a process called eutrophication. Eutrophication causes algae to deplete the oxygen supply in water. This leads to an overall lower quality of water. People can also make sure they dispose of their garbage correctly when garbage makes it into the ocean. By not being disposed of properly, it negatively affects the coral and the animals that live nearby. In this image, you can see the diverse marine life and coral life in Finding Nemo. But due to coral bleaching, Finding Nemo would never be possible because all the species relying on the coral to survive would die off, including Nemo and Dory. Furthermore, you can see this image with SpongeBob and coral bleaching. SpongeBob would not be possible if coral bleaching were prominent. Therefore, we must work our best collectively as a human race to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions and help solve coral bleaching and ocean acidification. Hi, I'm Mallory, and this is my turtle Flynn. I love him so much, and if ocean acidification and coral bleaching were still prominent, then the carbonic acid would destroy his shell and he would never be able to survive. And once a species like sea turtles or Flynn die off, tons of species around them die off because the coral that they need to survive for hunting grounds and feeding grounds and all the other species would eventually die off. So, become more eco-friendly and save Flynn's life.